right, everybody. Welcome to the Library is Open podcast. Today we have a very special guest and a former guest, Brian Pichman. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, thank you, Elise.
All right. So, Brian, if you don't know, Brian is our head of support at ByWater Solutions. He's also a part of the Evolve project and many other things in the library world. You probably know him. So, actually, Brian, since he's been on the podcast before, you can get to know all about him in the previous episode he's been on. I will link it in the description. But I kind of just want to get right into some hot topics here. And I know you've been at a lot of conferences recently. You also were kind of a co-collaborator with our AI conference we hosted late recently. So could you tell us a little bit about some conferences you've attended recently and some interesting things that you observed at some of those?
Yeah, um, the some of the most recent conferences, I was at the New Mexico Library Association conference, and had a pretty good time there. I always like to talk to the locals too whenever I travel, and just like tell them what I do and see what the responses are. Like some of my favorite ones was I was once in Florida, and the Uber driver and I were talking. He's like, "Oh, what brings you to Florida?" I'm like, "I'm doing a library event." And he's like, "What? What are you talking about? Are you like a book salesman?" And I was like, no, I don't sell books. I sell like computery stuff. It's really fun. And we went on to talking, and at some point he goes, "Wait, my library has internet for free, like Wi-Fi?" And I was like, "Yeah, where have you been all your life?" And he's like, "I've been walking like a mile to the coffee shop to use internet, and I live across the street from the library." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm like 95% sure they'll have Wi-Fi." And he's like, "I didn't know that. How come they don't tell me that?" And I was like, "I don't know." And so it's always really fun to like talk with locals. And so I was at this brewery, and the gentleman next to me was a cattle farmer. He had like a bunch of farms. He used to be in the oil and gas business. So we're talking about our careers and travels and stuff. And so then we're talking about libraries. And I was like, "Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of libraries about AI." And he like puts his drink down. And he's like, "Artificial insemination?" And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh shoot, that's probably an acronym in cattle and farming." And I was like, "No, artificial intelligence." He's like, "I never heard of AI being called that." And it was a very, I don't know, eye-opening like discussion because I just have been assuming everyone knew what AI meant. Um, and depending on your career field, that acronym means something completely different. And so it was thinking I gave him a small heart attack, but he was glad to know that libraries aren't doing that training live, because he was very confused about why libraries were getting involved with cattling. And so that was the New Mexico Library Association, where I talked about artificial intelligence and other tech trends like AR, VR, and XR. And the conference prior to that is one of my favorite conferences, the Internet Librarian Conference. And that takes place every year, either virtually or in person in Monterey, California. It's been virtual the last couple of years, but the cool part about being virtual is like you'll have people from all over the world joining. And so in some of the sessions there are people from other countries like staying late up at night to join a, afternoon session and having their thoughts, questions, and like that. And it's always a really great conference. A lot of really great ideas come from the Internet Librarian Conference, where I got most of my ideas when I first started was from that conference and a conference called Computers and Libraries, which takes place in DC in March.
Yeah, that's so just going back for a second, that's one of my favorite part of library conferences too, is talking to the people, the locals when they find out there's a library conference. And yeah, those aha moments when people realize, oh, libraries do this, or wow, there's so many of you, or wow, librarians really like to party. Like there's just so many misconceptions, and these conferences are such a great way to help shatter them and just enlighten people on what libraries do. And I'm just trying to imagine a cattling program at a library. That would be wild. The Des Moines Library actually did have a butter sculpting program recently where somebody came and she taught how to sculpt these, real elaborate sculptures out of butter. So,
Nice. And then you just slap some toast on it and
yeah, exactly. Well, so it sounds like you've been to a lot of fun conferences lately. One I just want to go back and talk about real quick is one that we hosted at ByWater. It was our virtual AI conference. We had, I think, over 600 people register for that.
I think it's at 1,000 now for the recordings.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, because I wanted to just mention that the recording is still available through the end of the year, right?
Yep.
Any-
Yeah. And so there was people from NASA talking about how they're looking at artificial intelligence. We had a few folks that were talking about RAGs, or retrieval augmented generation systems. Um, and so a lot of like industry experts within their given careers were talking about AI, which is always super fascinating for me because I always promote the idea of like we need to stop talking to other libraries or librarians about tech. Let's talk to people in other industries and see what they're doing. Because if we would have done that, we would have known about AI 10 years ago because healthcare has been using it for quite some time, as well as marketing companies have been like really strong marketing companies are leveraging data to make decisions and generate content for the last 10, 15 years too.
Absolutely. And I just thought, the diversity of the speakers, there were so many different facets of librarianship and AI that were touched upon. I just thought overall it was a great conference. And if you
Yeah,
haven't,
it was
yeah,
it was
please,
awesome.
yeah, look at the link. It was really, really, really enlightening. Um, and so kind of a segue from that is the main topic of the podcast today is I want to talk to Brian about what he thinks is going to be the trends for 2025, going into 2025. At the end of the year, you start to get like your Spotify wrapped and your year-end reviews and all that. And so I kind of thought, what a good time to maybe look ahead and see what's going to be trending in the next year. So, Brian, I mean, what just based on kind of what you've seen and the workshops you've been hosting and what you've been doing, what do you think is going to be, hot in 2025?
I think the buzzword of AI will still live on in 2025. It is my hope that we stop talking about generative AI because to me that's been around for a while and it's relatively boring for me. Um, and what I'd like to hear more about is how we're using it from an automation approach, whether that's reviewing knowledge articles and then spitting out things that are being missed, or listening to a strategy session taking place and saying, "Hey, here's a bunch of ideas that took place during this conversation. Here's three ideas that I think will make the most sense to investigate," and using AI to as a collaborative partner in that respect because it'll have better memory and recall than you or I can have. And then trend that across of a year of strategy sessions. It might go, hey, you brought up the same topic as a solve for the last four meetings, but you never acted on it. Why not? And then you chat with your chatbot to figure out what's being missed. And those models are relatively inexpensive to build and use. So I think my hope is we talk more about that in 2025, because that's a huge area that we're not thinking about, that it does really, really well. And the smart companies that are using it in that way are far above their competitors. So the other tech trends that I think would be are going to occur more is I don't know, in like 2016, 2017, the concept of digital twins was being spoken about, which is having like an artificial intelligence interaction in a VR space or an AR space or virtual or augmented reality space. So imagine me going into a library with somebody that has read all the same books I have read and saying, "Hey, Brian, I see you're returning this book today. It was a great read," because it would have that in its memory. You should check out this other section, or the library is doing these programs, and I can do it all in my VR headset, sitting on the couch eating Cheetos and never having to leave. I think this idea of digital twin will hopefully take off because I think the technology itself has become a lot cheaper. If we think about VR headsets and AR headsets, they were in the thousands of dollars. Like what HoloLens was $2,500 if you wanted to play. And now you can buy Meta Ray-Ban glasses, I think, for like $150, $250. I don't know what the current price is, but it's not in the thousands. Like you can buy it and have like a little AI voice in your head as you're playing. Like I saw a demo once where someone was wearing glasses and it was like, "Hey Meta, which pool ball should I hit to win?" And it's like, "All right, hit the yellow one at this angle." And like that's where the tech is at now. And so I think we're going to hopefully see more of that in 2025, whether it's for winning in pool bets and being a pool hustler, or if it's like I walk into a library and I only speak Spanish and everything's in English, I can put my glasses on and see everything in Spanish, or vice versa. And like that tech has been, it creeps up every few years of like, oh wow, look, you can do this, but I don't know why people don't jump on it because then it like disappears. But every year it seems to come back with somebody with a new set of products that can do like interpret sign language, or even like give you closed captioning on your glasses, as people are talking to you. Um, so yeah, I think something like that is going to be in 2025.
So, speaking of the glasses, I want to give a little shout out to our friend Chad Marin, who spoke at our AI conference. Chad's always posting on Facebook. He has one of those glasses, and so he's always like going into Publix and doing, which is a local grocery store in Florida. I realize this is not just a Florida podcast, but always doing really interesting things with those glasses. So that made me think of that. Yeah, it's really, really interesting technology for sure.
Yeah, Chad's one of my favorite nerds to follow in the library world. He seems to always be playing and tinkering with something. So he's a great guy if you've never followed him before.
Yes, go follow Chad. Chad. And is something else I just want to touch on real quick because I know that you've been involved in this is cybersecurity and cybersecurity training, especially for youth. I mean, do you think that's something that libraries are going to be focusing more on, maybe with training or just in general?
I would hope, but the challenge with that, and I was, I think you're referencing, I was on CBS National News talking about cybersecurity and why it's important to teach children about cybersecurity because a malicious actor will go after whatever the weakest link is. And kids are pretty understanding with things on the internet, but they don't know that someone can pose as an uncle. Or, they might understand that the Rich Prince scam isn't real. I didn't when I was a kid. I thought that was legit. I was like, Mom, Dad, we're millionaires. We're related to a rich prince, and all he needs is something called a social security card. I don't know what that is. Can I have that so we can get our money? And my mom's like, "What the heck you doing?" And so we could have been millionaires if my mom would have just gave me her social security card, or I would have like my identity stolen. It might have been worth the risk as a small child, but as an adult, I'm glad I didn't take that gamble. Um, but yeah, like my opinion on it is like schools in particular are getting ransomwared from data extortion instead now because most malicious actors know that people have backups. So I can ransomware, they'll restore it. Or I can go, hey, I copied all your data, which is way worse than losing your data. And now I can go, I'm going to sell this or use it unless if you pay a fine. And that's why schools are getting hit so hard because they have a treasure trove of data. Some schools have all those social security numbers on a system somewhere. And to capture that can be easy depending on where the school's at. And so teaching children in particular about the dangers of cybersecurity will hopefully prepare them for future careers. But the challenge in our economy is the reason why um, programming became part of the Common Core curriculum in all US schools is if you see where the funding came from, it was Facebook, Microsoft, Google were funding how to teach people how to program. And there wasn't because they wanted to make the world, I'm not sure, maybe they want to make the world a better place, but the incentive is if I can teach thousands of people how to code at a younger age, can I pay them less as adults? Because everyone has that skill set. And so if you look at the price of a programmer, you may have to pay 150, $200 an hour for a decent programmer. But now you can go to school for 4 years, be a really good programmer, and be told you start off at $20 an hour because everyone else has that a skill like that. And so there's a financial incentive for pushing coding. There isn't as much of a financial incentive for pushing cybersecurity schools. Um, Other than like hopefully they work for my company and they don't like get scammed into a phishing attack, right? There is no like immediate cause and effect. And so I don't know if ever it'll be part of a school curriculum to enforce a cybersecurity training. Like if you have an email, like my belief in the world is if you have an email account, you should have went through some cybersecurity training. Like very simple. If you're connecting to the internet, if you want to go use social media, you need a class. Um, to at least identify things. And it's going to be even harder now that malicious actors have access to AI to make things more believable. I can spin up an AI bot that says, "Hey, I work for ByWater Solutions." If I didn't, and I would like to do, how would I break into ByWater as an employee? And it would go me back and forth and say, hey, give me something that's more compelling. Um, like, your Koha installation is going to be deleted. It would know that we support Koha, like, unless if you click this link. And so then as a malicious actor can then take that and run with it. And it's really hard to notice the difference these days. And so hopefully teaching people, we can help mitigate future attacks. But again, there's not a lot of financial incentive for teaching kids. So I think the library has an amazing opportunity to teach those things because we don't need the financial backing to teach a cybersecurity class. Like we can just call up one of our local residents and say, hey, you're a cybersecurity engineer. Would you mind giving a workshop for our kids or even our adults about cybersecurity? And most cybersecurity nuts are like, heck yeah, because they understand that if they teach more people how to be safe online, it makes their jobs a lot easier. Um, and so I think that would be a really great approach for libraries to kind of investigate about cybersecurity.
So, oh yeah, so number one, I apologize that I failed to preface all this with the fact that you were on CBS News because that was extremely exciting, and we will share.
And Paramount Plus.
Oh, and Paramount Plus. Okay, forgive me, Brian. So we're going to share the link to that segment in the description as well, so you can go back and watch. It was excellent. And also, thank you for that nightmare fuel of the visual of ByWater possibly being hacked by an AI bot, but also, what we can do to avoid that. That's very helpful as
Yeah.
well.
But we have
And
a great security team, so I'm not worried. But
no,
uh, that would be, if we didn't have one, I would say that would be a worry. That's not for us. We're better.
yeah, yeah. And I'm also sorry that you never became a millionaire as a child, that those
I
dreams.
know. Yeah. My mom's phone number, if you'd like to call her and tell her about that, is I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, I'll call her later. Well,
Thanks.
Brian, we touched on a lot of topics today, and I just want to thank you so much again for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to chat with us on the podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
Nope. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thanks so much, Brian. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Toodles. Bye.